Pandora's box. During the course of one morning, I received 3 signs coming from different continents. An email from the journalist, Lauro Jardim, asking me to confirm certain facts in a note about me, and mentioning the situation in Rocinha, Rio de Janeiro. A phone call from my wife, who has just landed in France. She had taken a couple who are friends of ours to Brazil to show them the country, and the couple had ended up feeling both frightened and disappointed. Then the journalist who has come to interview me for a Russian television station asks me if it's true that in Brazil over 500,000 people were murdered between 1980 and 2000. Of course it's not true, I say. But then he shows me the statistics from a Brazilian institute, the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics as it turns out. I fall silent. The violence in my country has crossed oceans and mountains and reached this place in Central Asia. What can I say? Saying isn't enough, because words that are not transformed into actions breed pestilence, as William Blake said. I have tried to do my bit. I set up my institute, along with 2 heroic people, Isabella and Yolanda Maltarali, where we try to give education, affection and love to 360 children from the Paveo Pavazinho favela or shanty town. I know that, at this moment, thousands of Brazilians are doing much more, working away silently, without official help, without private support, merely in order not to be overwhelmed by that worst of all enemies, despair. I used to think that if everyone played their part, then things would change, but tonight, while I look out at the icy mountains on the frontier with China, I have my doubts. Perhaps, even with everyone doing their bit, the saying I learned as a child is still true: you cannot argue with force. I look again at the mountains lit by the moon. Is it really true that against force there is no argument? Like all Brazilians, I tried and fought and struggled to believe that the situation in my country would, one day, get better, but with each year that passes, things only seem to grow more complicated, regardless of who the president is, which political party is in power, what their economic plans are, or, indeed, regardless of the absence of all these things. I've witnessed violence in the 4 corners of the world. I remember once, in Lebanon, immediately after the devastating war there, I was walking amongst the ruins of Beirut with a friend, Sola Saad. She told me that her city had now been destroyed 7 times. I asked, jokingly, why they didn't give up rebuilding it and move somewhere else. Because it's our city, she replied. Because the person who does not honor the earth in which his ancestors are buried will be cursed for all eternity. The person who dishonors his country, dishonors himself. In one of the classic Greek creation myths, Zeus, furious because Prometheus had stolen fire and thus given independence to mortal men, sends Pandora off to marry Prometheus' brother, Epimetheus. Pandora takes with her a box which she has been forbidden to open. However, just as with Eve in Christian mythology, her curiosity gets the better of her. She lifts the lid to see what is inside and, at that moment, all the evils of the world fly out and scatter about the earth. Only one thing remains inside: hope. So, despite the fact that everything contradicts this, despite my sadness and my feelings of impotence, despite being almost convinced at this moment that nothing will ever get better, I cannot lose the one thing that keeps me alive: hope. That word treated with such irony by pseudo-intellectuals, who consider it a synonym of deceit. That word, so manipulated by governments, who make promises they know they will not keep, and thus inflict even more wounds on people's hearts. That word that so often rises with us in the morning, gets sorely wounded as the day progresses, dies at nightfall, and is reborn with the new day. Yes, there is a saying that states that you cannot argue with force, but there is another saying: where there's life, there's hope. And I hang on to that saying as I look across at the snowy mountain on the Chinese border.